Hi, I'm Nick. I'm a digital nomad and I've lived in both London and Prague. And today I'm going to compare the cities. Which one is best? Let's find out. So firstly and most importantly, which country has the best beer? Now, this may seem obvious to some people, Prague's famous for beer, but some weird stuff's been happening in the beer market. Czech beer is now very popular in the UK, so you can get Starý Pramen, the brewery of which I live very close to in Anděl in Prague. You can get this in the UK now. It's extremely popular. The weird thing is, English beer is now very popular in Prague. They make it themselves, but IPA, or IPA as they call it incorrectly, Indian Pale Ale, which is an English invention, loads of Czech breweries have started making this one now. So with that in mind, who wins? Prague wins. Okay, so 1-0 to Prague. What's the next one? Okay, service. If you've been to Prague or generally Eastern Europe, there are certain exceptions. Service, Eastern Europe isn't famous for good service. Now, service in the UK it's not like it's amazing. It's not like Southeast Asia or something. But service in the UK, you don't generally get, for example, restaurants acting like they want to kill your firstborn child or kidnap you and hold you hostage or put poison in your food, which is generally, it's kind of the base. You do get good service in Prague, but the baseline is kind of, I want you to die. Why did you come to the restaurant? It's incredibly inconvenient to me that you came. I want you to leave. I don't want you to cause a fuss. And I don't care if you like the food. For me, now maybe this is my Western imperialism, maybe this is me not understanding the culture, but wanting to die, for me, that is a negative in the column for Prague, and London wins that one. Okay, on to number 3, transport. This is quite a boring one, but I suppose we might as well cover it. Both cities have really extensive public transport. The only problem is if you live in East London, you have a friend in West London, it's going to take you about a day to get there because London's so freaking huge. And it's also very expensive. You can pay £7, £8, £9. That's like $12 just for a day pass on the tube. I pay $200 a year, US dollars a year, for my transport pass in Prague, and that gets me all transport, metro, tram, buses, and everything. So although the wages are higher in London, I have to give this one to Prague, really. So that's 2-1 to Prague. Next up, and this is an important one, the drunk Englishman factor. And this isn't quite as obvious as it may seem. Obviously, England does have a lot of drunk Englishmen, and this is a big problem. Well, not me, obviously. Other drunk Englishmen. This is a big problem. I would never get drunk. Anyway, this is a big problem. But it's not quite the way it seems, because although England does obviously have more drunk Englishmen, when Englishmen come to Prague to get drunk, they get even more drunk than usual because they're on holiday. That's very drunk. So this obvious nuisance, I have to call this a tie. In fact, interestingly enough, there is a statue in Prague that apparently, according to the sculptor, it shows a man urinating and it swivels round. It's quite artistic. Apparently that's modelled on an Englishman. Who knew? So this is a tie. So it's still 2-1 to Prague. Before I go any further, I'm just going to ask you to please click the like button. It really helps the channel. Thanks very much. So number 5, prices. If you're a banker, London is cheap. Otherwise, Prague. So number 6, beauty. Now, London does have a lot of nice beauty spots. Prague is one massive Disneyland beauty spot. London also has a lot of holes, if you pardon my French. Prague, yes, it does have some communist apartment blocks on the edge of town, but it's so ridiculously attractive. Prague has to win this one. 3-1 to Prague. It's going to be interesting. International travel. Now, Prague, as Czechs will tell you, Prague is in Central Europe. It isn't. It's in Eastern Europe. Now, Central Europe doesn't really exist, let's be honest. You have Eastern Europe, which is mostly Slavic, former communist countries, and you have Western Europe, which is basically everyone else. But Czechs take this as an insult. I love Eastern Europe. I think Eastern Europe's awesome. Czechs should just own it. There's so many cool things about Eastern Europe. But anyway, as we're in the heart of Europe, as they incorrectly say, you can get a train to Germany very easily, Austria, Switzerland, France, Hungary, very easy. But London has a lot of international flights. London has the busiest airspace in the world, so there's a ton of flights out of London, especially a lot of cheap short haul flights to other European destinations. And you can also get the Channel Tunnel to Belgium or France, but it's an island, which makes it a bit more cut off. But those tasty cheap budget flights, a lot of direct ones, and really good long haul international flights, I think London's got to win this one, so it's 2-2. Museums. Now, unless you're into the very historically important and interesting, definitely not for tourists, torture museum, then I think London has to win this one. It's got a ludicrously large number of world-class museums with stuff like the Rosetta Stone in there, the only painting from likeness of Shakespeare in the National Portrait Gallery. You've got the Tate Modern art galleries and things. Prague does have one or two good museums, but yeah, London wins that one. So I think it's 3-2 to London. Food. Now, this is a weird one because Czech food sucks, but English food also sucks. So how do we separate them? Well, this is... I'm going to do something here which isn't really right, but London has more and better foreign food, so London wins, even though it doesn't have good English food, really. Kind of unfair, but I'm giving this one to London. If you're a digital nomad, if you can work remotely, if you get your work from outside Prague's great because it's very cheap. And the opposite's true. If you get work from outside London, and you live in London, unless you're getting it from a very expensive, high-paid country, it's going to be very difficult to live in London unless you're earning a lot of money. It's like you're doing the reverse geo-arbitrage. Geo-arbitrage, of course, is where you get paid from an expensive country and live in a cheaper country. So if you're a digital nomad, Prague makes a lot more sense. Which is better, London or Prague? Well, it's a tie in this case. It's a draw, as we say in England. So it's about the same, but really they're very different cities.